Well, the splitter is in the indoor shop. It has one problem and a couple maintenance improvement projects to do on it. This is perhaps the most challenging, although I think it's going to be an easy fix. This normally is not here in this position, unsplit. But what I ran into when I was splitting this is a piece of aspen or poplar, is that I went forward and it did not split. It could, pressure went up to maybe 500 pounds, not nearly enough to split it. But what the issue that had been building over the last couple weeks is that in the return mode, you're supposed to put it to the detent and it returns, and then when it bottoms out, is fully retracted, then this will automatically kick off, but it wasn't. So that's an issue with this detent feature in the back, which I've had a part before and it was just sort of built up with some rust and crud because it's sort of exposed to the atmosphere, and it's not really part of the hydraulic system. It just operates with a spring. Obviously it has some communication with the hydraulics. But with the knot going forward, I've never had that. I've never had the issue with it not splitting, not having enough power to split. So I'm going to take this apart. Hopefully it's just something that's causing this spool. Maybe it's not. It doesn't seem as though it has as much throw as it should. So I'm hoping that it's just a matter of something is not allowing the spool to completely go that way, which is the direction for splitting, is this. The spool goes that way. So let's get that apart and see what it looks like. So I had this apart before for the same reason of it not releasing when the cylinder was fully retracted. It just ended up being cleaning up the crud. There's at least one ball bearing, I think, and a spring and some detent stuff. You know, it's been a couple of years, so I don't remember exactly what's in there. I really like this. I should have had this years ago, a little magnetic tray. And you can see these cap screws, when I put them back in, all nice and lubed up. So what I normally do, if I remember when I put stuff back together, is I put some grease on it. So this is under a little bit of pressure, but not much. Empty. You know what? Could have been as simple as that. It looks like this this cap screw here was not threaded all the way in. It looked like it had just backed out. So that probably calls for some Loctite. I'm guessing that's all that it was. Hopefully I don't lose a bunch of parts. Somewhere in here there is a ball. I think I see it. Right there. That's a ball. Tried to lose it. I'm thinking that was it. And since that nut had, or the socket head cap screw had backed out, it wasn't allowing this spool to shift fully. So I think I'm just going to put it back together and give it a shout. Now as far as communication goes, you can see most of this is sort of dry. It's not filled with hydraulic oil. But there's a little hole there that communicates with this hole here. I can't remember, I think at one point I understood how it works, but anyhow, when the pressure, there's a little O-ring, a black O-ring right there. I'm thinking there's a spring in here, if I remember right, and when the pressure, when the cylinder bottoms out, the pressure will build up and it relieves that ball that I lost, this ball bearing, and it allows it to release from this groove right here, which is in there. So I'm thinking that's all that was wrong with it. So let's just put it back together and try it out. So this ball still has grease, I think, from the last time I put it in here, which helps to hold it in place. Okay, so that's goes like that, and I'm gonna get some Loctite. I'm gonna clean up the threads. If I have some, I think I have some blue Loctite. I don't want to use red. Actually, it's Permatex. Don't have the Loctite brand. A lot easier than trying to hold it. Only I could remember the details of putting it together last time. Just one of these in here so it doesn't. Yeah, the spring in here sort of does not help to align the holes, but they're relatively easily compressed. So in this case, you can see, because this is, you can overcome that and force that ball bearing. You can force that ball bearing outside of that groove, or with it latched, the pressure will move the spring up, take the pressure off that ball, and then automatically let it release. So you can see here, still got to put the cover on. The cover really just acts just to protect the spring here from the weather. There's no oil pressure, there's no hydraulic pressure that gets inside here. It basically stops at that seal there and in that little O-ring that communicates with this spring here. Bolts back out and put the cap on. All we can do now is give it a try. I'll start it up. I'll let the engine warm up a little bit, and then we'll cycle this. I guess we'll split this piece since it's on here. I'm sort of stuck there. And then work on the other modifications. works like it should. I'm very happy with that. This retract feature, when I was having problems with it until the very end, when it wouldn't even go forward or extend, it would work okay when the oil was cold, but when the oil warmed up is when it would not release. When the cylinder was fully retracted, it would just stay here, and it would, you know, go up to whatever the release setting is, 1750 or so, and then just sit there until I did that. So that that bolt backing out was the problem there. I'm guessing. I'll verify that after I've had a chance to run this with the oil warm. Since it's in the garage here and everything is easily accessible and easy to work on, I'm going to change the oil. I don't think I've changed it since I bought it. I mean, looking at the oil itself, this looks really clear still and light. But it wouldn't hurt to change it, because these things almost always are not in a good spot, and they always cause a mess everywhere. So hopefully with this drain pan I can catch it. Plus, now that I see it run out there, it doesn't look nearly as clean as I was thinking it was, so I guess I probably should have changed the oil before now. Lesson learned. So while that drips, I'm going to work on some other things. I did not record it on video, but I made these after a couple of attempts. This one and the identical motor, which is a 390 on my log loading trailer. Sort of a standoff for the muffler one, just because the muffler gets hot even with the OEM shroud, if you will. And so to bump up against it, you're not going to burn yourself as easily. This gets warm but not hot. And to put the tarp on it, which is when I'm done, I don't have to wait for this to cool off. So this took a couple iterations. The first attempt was to mount, actually my first attempt was to weld this on. You can see a spot there, a spot underneath there. And that did not work. That lasted maybe a couple hours of runtime, and those welds just vibrated loose. So then I tried to attach this with these pipe standoffs, 1-inch standoff, using these two holes here, which screwed directly into the muffler. That did not work because these either were stripped. The original bolts are metric, I think 5mm. And that did not hold. That didn't even last 5 minutes. And my next attempt, which seems to be working well, which is to fasten this separately to the shroud. This is a 1/4 inch. I just happened to be a flathead screw, but that's just what I had, but it doesn't have to be flathead. With a nut on the other side, and then I used sheet metal screws, number 14, which are those big ones with a 3/8 head as well as the slot. There are 5 bolts that hold the shroud on, and just use the original 5mm holes. These are a lot ruggeder and they went in nicely, so I'm guessing that will hold that on a lot better than the 5mm bolts did. This one does not look as bad, but the filter on the other engine, the log loader, does need to be changed. So I have a new one there. And then the other thing for this, which this one did not have its original exhaust deflector, I guess they're called, so the exhaust goes directly out here. So I got an aftermarket one, so I can direct the exhaust downward, so if you're walking by it, it doesn't won't burn you. And it shouldn't get this as hot if I direct it downward. So let's put this on, replace the air filter, then a couple things on the business end of this as well. See, this wasn't too bad. A little bit of oil on the bottom there. But the paper filter is pretty good. This I had dusted off before, and it's not in bad a shape. The other one, this is all disintegrated. This is quite visibly dirty. Much different than this one. This one is, I think it's an OEM Honda part. So this little kit, I could get the Honda OEM one, which is more square. This one is rounded. I just thought it kind of looked neat. Wasn't really any cheaper. They both, I think both, whether it's Honda OEM or this aftermarket one, come with the sheet metal screws. In a previous video, I had shown the limitation of this in some elm, where I had several, I think it was two different pieces of elm that would not split. I was surmising that I might have had better luck if this was maybe sharper, not quite as blunt. I had cut this off because the distance between here, the opening, was actually 24 inches, maybe slightly under, and since I cut my firewood 24 inches long, it was touch and go to actually fit a piece in here. So I cut this off. You can see the remnants of the old I don't know, grip pieces, 6 of them, 3 on each half of there, that I took off because, again, that was extending out and reducing the opening. And I just welded some beads of metal on there to keep it from slipping around. There's a couple spots that I'm going to add some, so that's part of what I'm going to do today. But the next thing I want to do is I'm going to sort of hollow grind this. So keep the point where it is and just sort of take out some material there to make it a little bit sharper point. So maybe a little before and after from that point of view. So that's what it looks like now. For the most part, I stayed away from the very tip. There's no need to shorten it anymore. And I wasn't after making it sharp, just providing a little different geometry for that wedge. So I don't know if it's obvious to see there that anything is different. But you should be able to see it here. If there's light shining, you can see, hopefully you can see the where the light shines through, and this surface is actually curved. That's what's called a hollow grind. For like an industrial knife that you want super sharp, a hollow grind is good because you can put a flat whetstone on here and it'll very easily make a nice sharp point here, because we're not worried about taking off this metal. Just the whetstone would hit on the tip and on the heel of the knife. So the radius or the diameter of that is really the same as the grindstone. So I chose a smaller stone, not a big one, just because I wanted as much as I could. I probably could still grind some more and make that a little bit deeper, but that's good for now. If I do see some improvement, but it doesn't completely solve the issue with the hard to split elm, then I may make this hollow grind a bit deeper, but for now I'm going to call that good. So it's done draining, and I've cleaned up a mess all over the frame, but nice painted frame, it's easy to clean up. The other thing that's always challenging with a lot of these small motors, it seems as though, is filling it up. This one doesn't really have a dipstick. It does on the other side, but there's not like a full or keep between the lines. I think with this style fill, you fill it. You can't overfill it because it'll just come out as long as it's relatively level. so there's no danger of overfilling it. So that's basically what I'm going to do, is fill it until the oil comes out. There's another fill plug on the opposite side, which does have that. I'm going to remove it just so the air, you can hear it plugging there. Then if it does come out, need to catch it on both sides. It's coming out. Okay, that didn't work well. So now it's filled with fresh oil. These plugs, put them back. So now with this muffler cooled off, I can put this on. Hopefully, put it on. I know I won't burn my fingers. I think I'm just going to go straight down. It does allow you to index it because of the 6 holes there and 6 holes here. You can index it wherever you'd like, but I'm just going to go straight down. I have a little magnet. This is a little bit cumbersome, but it does have the magnet on it, so that's why I did it, so I could stick it in there. Find one that can make it. Voila! It is done. So the next thing I wanted to do is, when I first got this table was all smooth, and you put pieces on here and it would easily slide off one way or the other. I tried welding some tabs on here, just sort of spot welding, or tack welding, I guess. And it works better, but it's still not what I'd like. So what I'm going to do is I got some little half-inch, I don't know, 3/4 inch angle iron that I'm going to weld on here, mostly back here, not so much up front there. But when they do slide off, it's left or right. So I'm thinking if I put a couple of rails here, it will help the stuff not to slide off left or right. So I'll weld those on. So for both the angle iron rails and for some more anti-slide weld buttons, whatever you want to call them, I'm going to use 6011. One reason is it penetrates through paint and stuff. You don't have to worry about cleaning stuff off. That's sort of why they call it a farmer rod, because it can basically burn through anything. Well, that should put the do it to it. For that, a concave surface or a hollow grind for the anvil, splitter, a little bit more robust anti-slide surface, repaired splitter valve, change the oil, new air filter, new directional exhaust. I think that's it. All small fixes, thankfully, but they should make a big difference in using it. So let's give this a try after the modifications and see if the hollow ground point will work any better on these pieces of elm. I'm just going to clip the ends off so you have a nice fresh end to work with, and we'll see if it works any better. Well, we split it. I'm not sure it was much better. I ended up turning it and splitting it, and where it looks like where I had actually started to split it before, but you saw how gnarly it was, twisted grain and so forth. This piece is much bigger. I'm not going to attempt that. My plan with that one, as well as these two over here, is just to let them dry out. Maybe they'll develop a natural split that I can take advantage of. The auto retract works well. I haven't really given these a chance yet, but I'm sure they'll be a lot better than they were. So that'll put the do it to this little set of modifications, improvements, repairs, whatever you want to call them. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it.